Have you ever stopped to think about the pain and suffering some animals endure in silence? It's hard to imagine the kind of cruelty that exists in the world, but unfortunately, it's a reality for many animals. We often hear about animals being mistreated or abandoned, but the true extent of their suffering is often hidden from view. Today, I want to share with you the heartbreaking story of a dog named Charlie, whose life was filled with neglect and cruelty until a group of kind-hearted rescuers stepped in to save him. Join us here at Animals Need Love as we take you through Charlie's incredible yet painful journey. Charlie had been through a lot of pain. He looked like a dog that had been left behind by the person who should have looked out for him. When he got sick, his owner got tired of taking care of him. He chose not to help Charlie and instead tied him to a pile of trash, leaving him to rot without food or water. As the days turned into weeks, Charlie lay there useless and alone, his body slowly dying. The way he looked showed how badly he had been treated. His eyes were cloudy and his body was thin. His spirit was broken, but not all the way. Many kind people walked by and were moved by Charlie's situation. Their hearts were heavy with questions. How could someone leave a friend who was so loyal? Why did people in the world treat animals so badly and let them suffer in silence? As they tried to deal with the harsh truth of Charlie's life, these questions stayed in the air, unspoken but clear. But no one stopped for him. Time passed, then one day everything changed. As fate would have it, a lady walking by the garbage heap saw him. Despite the harsh sight of his frail body and clouded eyes, something about Charlie reached out to her. She couldn't just walk away. Charlie, a mere shadow of the dog he once was lying there, motionless and hopeless. Her heart couldn't bear to see such a precious soul in such a state, so she made the decision to help him. Gently, she untied Charlie from the garbage, carrying him with care to the other side of the road. She knew she couldn't leave him there, not like this. She immediately called for help, reaching out to an animal rescue team, explaining the desperate situation she had found herself in. The rescuers team, upon hearing the news, rushed to the scene to see the broken dog that had been abandoned by his owner, left to rot on the garbage heap. Charlie didn't know it at that moment, but from that day on, his life would never be the same. When the rescue team arrived, they were horrified at what they found. Charlie was barely alive, his eyes infested with flies, his body frail and emaciated. He seemed to be blind, though it was difficult to tell for sure. The rescue team carefully loaded him into their vehicle and began the journey to safety. However, as they prepared to leave, the cruel reality of the situation reared its ugly head. The owner appeared, his cold eyes devoid of any concern for the dog he had so callously discarded. "What are you doing with that dog?" he asked, his voice flat, almost dismissive. "We're taking him for treatment," one of the rescuers explained, their voice firm but compassionate. "He's been through so much. He needs medical attention immediately." The owner stood there for a moment as if considering the situation, but his indifference quickly became clear. "I don't want him anymore," he replied coldly. "He's useless now. I tied him up with the garbage because he's dying. Take him and take the rest of the dogs too." There was no sorrow in his words, no hint of guilt or sadness for the life he had discarded. It was as if Charlie had been nothing more than an inconvenience to him, a creature he could cast aside without a second thought. The rescuers were stunned by his cruelty, but they didn't waste another moment. They took Charlie away, determined to give him the care he deserved, even if his owner refused to see the value in his life. Charlie was rushed to the vet as quickly as possible, but the news wasn't good. He was severely malnourished, his body a skeleton covered with fur, and his eyes were in such bad condition that it was unclear if he could even see. It was clear that Charlie had endured far more than neglect. He had been left to deteriorate for so long that his body and spirit were both broken. As the vet examined him, the room fell silent. "We've got a lot to work with here, but it's gonna be tough," the vet said, his voice grave. Charlie's tested positive for leishmaniasis. It's a deadly disease caused by parasites that attack the skin, internal organs, and eyes. This is gonna be a long road to recovery. The vet paused, looking at Charlie with sympathy. "We can treat him, but it's gonna be expensive and take months. The medication is not available locally, so we'll need to import it from Europe. Each box costs €50, and he'll need at least 15 boxes. That's over $750 just for the medication alone." The rescuers exchanged glances, anxiety flooding their hearts. The cost was overwhelming, and the road ahead looked uncertain, but there was no question in their minds. Charlie had to have a chance. "Okay," one of them said, trying to hold back tears. "What else?" "What about his eyes and his overall health?" "The leishmaniasis has already caused significant damage to his eyes," the vet explained. "It's unclear if he'll ever regain full vision, but we'll do everything we can to treat the infection. He's also severely anemic, probably from the malnutrition and dehydration he suffered while being abandoned. His blood levels are dangerously low." "And his legs?" the rescuer asked, her voice tight with emotion as she remembered the wounds on Charlie's legs. "They're infected," the vet replied, "likely due to the sores from being tied in one place for too long. We'll treat the infections, but we need to be careful. His body is very weak right now." The vet's words hung in the air, heavy with the reality of the situation. The rescuers looked at Charlie, whose frail body lay motionless on the table, his eyes clouded and distant. Despite the odds, they knew they couldn't give up on him. "Let's get him stable first," the vet said, his tone more hopeful now. "We'll put him in a foster home where he can receive around-the-clock care. He needs good food, hydration, and constant monitoring. It's going to be expensive, around $100 a month just for the foster care. We'll also need to cover the costs for his medical treatments, blood tests, and transportation to the vet." The rescuers nodded, determination setting in. The road to recovery was going to be long and filled with challenges, but they were ready to fight for Charlie. They knew it wasn't just about his survival, it was about giving him a future. They immediately set up a fundraising campaign, reaching out to the community, sharing Charlie's story, and urging everyone to help. "Charlie deserves this," one of the rescuers said softly. "We can't let him suffer any longer. We'll do whatever it takes." And with that, they began the long process of fighting for Charlie's life. They began a fundraising campaign, reaching out to the community for help, urging everyone to support Charlie's recovery. They were no longer just fighting for his survival. They were fighting for his future. As time passed, Charlie began to show signs of improvement. He started eating, drinking, and walking again. His tail, once limp from exhaustion, now wagged when he saw the rescuers. He even began to sunbathe in the mornings, a simple joy that filled the rescuers with hope. His progress was slow, but it was progress nonetheless. Charlie had gained a little weight, and his blood levels had improved slightly, but there was still much work to be done. His eyes, however, remained a concern. They were still oozing pus, and the damage caused by leishmaniasis was irreversible. Despite the ongoing treatment, his vision remained blurry, and the fear of him losing his sight entirely lingered. But Charlie had a will to live that was stronger than anyone could have imagined. Every time he saw another dog from afar, his tail would wag in excitement. It was as if he still believed in the possibility of friendship. Despite the abuse he had suffered, he had learned to trust the rescuers, even though his past had taught him to fear humans. He enjoyed car rides, food, and treats, but his true joy came from being petted. He would nuzzle into the rescuers' laps, seeking comfort in their gentle touch. Charlie's journey wasn't without its struggles. His behavior was still affected by his traumatic past. He was easily scared by strangers and often became protective of those he trusted. But that was only a reflection of the pain he had endured. His constant fear made it difficult for him to fully relax, but the rescuers were patient with him. They knew that healing wasn't just physical, it was emotional as well. They made sure to provide him with toys, especially stuffed ones, which he loved to destroy in seconds. The simple act of seeing him happy brought a sense of peace to their hearts. As the weeks turned into months, Charlie's condition improved. He had gained 5 kilograms, though he was still underweight. His blood tests showed positive progress, and his eyes were no longer as inflamed. Everyone felt a sense of joy at his recovery. Even though Charlie didn't know what would happen, his future looked better than it ever had. He might never fully get over what happened to him in the past, but he was no longer by himself. The people who came to help him were like family to him, and they loved him. Charlie had a bad past, but they knew he earned the love and happiness that all dogs should have. They kept looking for people who might want to adopt him, hoping that one day someone would give him a forever home. But for now, their main goal was to get him the medical care he needed and make his days as pleasant as possible. There were many people who felt moved by Charlie's story. His story was shared on social media, and people from all over the world gave money to help pay for his care. His journey showed how powerful kindness can be, how important caring is, and how strong the animal spirit can be. Charlie had been through a lot, but he made it through. He was getting better with the help of the people who cared for him. One thing was clear, Charlie was no longer just a dog tied to a trash can. His future was still unclear. He had made it through, so he deserved all the love in the world. His story showed us that every life is important and that there is always hope, even when things look the worst. Charlie's journey wasn't over yet, but the love and care he was getting made him slowly start to think that maybe, just maybe, he could have a happy ending after all. That's the end of the story today. Have you ever seen an animal go through something so heartbreaking? Or maybe you've been touched by a rescue story that changed your perspective on what's truly important. We would love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Share them with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Pets in Love, for more incredible rescue stories that highlight the power of kindness and the life-changing impact of a second chance. Thank you for joining us today. See you in the next video.
Good boy.